Connie Heckler, I'm so glad you're here this morning. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo. You are all welcome to our virtual service today, and I thank you for coming out. Whether you are in your kitchen sipping your coffee or tea, or lying in bed with your laptop on your chest, you are welcome just as you are. From far and wide, we all welcome you to share a space of worship. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Julie Taylor, and I am a worship associate. Today, I am pleased to present a wonderful service compiled and coordinated by our UAIM team. That's our Universal Access and Inclusion Ministry team. I'm looking forward to a great service from Jenny Vaughn, Sue Mandolce, Tony Keller, Sophia Roberts, Steve Wixon, Lynn Mancuso, and especially the Reverend Barbara Meyers. The Reverend Barbara F. Meyers is a Unitarian Universalist community minister with a mental health ministry based in Fremont, California. She is assistant director of the Life Reaching Across Peer Support Center, the author of a mental health curriculum for congregations, and the book Showing Up for Each Other's Mental Health, published by Skinner House Books in July 2020. She's also the president of the UU Mental Health Network. After today's service during the fellowship hour, Barbara will be available in the designated chat room number one for the post fellowship hour. So if during fellowship you want to chat directly with Barbara, choose number one for your chat room. And a very special thanks goes out to the Reverend Joan Montagnes, who has made it possible for us to be virtually together, ensuring we never lose our sense of community. We are truly never alone. So a little bit of notes about Zoom. We can't see or hear you. You can't see or hear each other, but you can see and hear me, the UAIM team, and our special guest star, Reverend Barbara Meyers. You can also chat with each other all the way through the service, kind of like passing notes in study hall. It's a super good time to have. Big shout out time. Big shout outs to Josh Disick and John Petroselli and Justin DeClean and Bobby Withrow and Paul Zanoli and all our music staff who help to create our worship experience every week. Couple of announcements. The Justice Ministry team, in collaboration with Home, is collecting new warm socks for Friends of the Night people. Someone from the Justice Ministry team will be at the church garden entrance from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. this afternoon, as well as being available at the same time next Sunday. We welcome and appreciate any and all participation in this justice activity. Another announcement. Hey, good times. There is, if you haven't read this already, there is an imagination poetry project. Joan is collecting your original poetry. It's got to be short, like haiku, limericks, other short poems to come out of your imagination. Send your poems to Joan Montagnes over the course of the next week. We will be creating an outdoor poetry gallery in the church garden. So dust off your inspiration hat and jot a few lines of verse to breathe life into all of our imaginations. And don't forget, today is a congregational meeting. Please consider joining us at noon with the link in your weekly e-blast. We have so much going on in our vibrant and virtual church community. Please check out the e-blast or the church website. It's all included there. Just click a link and you're involved. Now, let us move into a space of worship.
The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried, but you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late, enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save.
Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words as they appear on the screen. We gather in loving community, inspiring one another to transform ourselves to create a more just and compassionate world. Let us sing together now hymn number 17, Every Night and Every Morning.
And now it's time for the story for all ages. The story today is Badger's Bad Mood. The words are by Hyowen Oram, and the pictures are by Susan Belacy. Susan Varley. Bat had been to deliver Badger's mail, and now he brought news. Badger was in a bad mood. But Badger's never in a bad mood, said Field Mouse. He is now, said Bat. He just sits there staring. Speak to him? He almost snaps your head off. I'll go and see him, said Mole. So Mole, Squirrel, and Rabbit went to see Badger. He was sitting in his chair in the gloom, his face like a dark cloud. Now, Badger, fussed Squirrel, this won't do at all. She switched on a light. Turn that off, snapped Badger, and leave me be. Squirrel and Rabbit were most offended. They scurried away. Mole hung around in the shadows. Without Badger in a good mood, everything seemed wrong. You still there, Mole? Badger heaved around in his chair. I'm sorry about this. Expect I'll get over it. But right now I'm just no good, you know? No good for anything. Don't worry, said Mole worriedly. We'll just wait. But waiting wasn't that easy. He was going to help me choose a vacation, said Bat. Perhaps we should get him some ginger ale, said Rabbit. And some puzzles to take his mind off things, said Squirrel. Well, take him something, said Rat. We're supposed to be going fishing today. I have a doctor friend staying, said Stoat. I'll take her over. She'll fix him up. Badger, however, was having none of it. Close the curtains, he begged of Mole. Keep them away. Mole went to the door. I'm sorry, but he's not seeing anyone. Well, we can't wait forever, said Frog. Make him see reason, Moley. Snap him out of it, said Weasel. I'll see what I can do, said Mole. When they had all gone away, Mole watched Badger staring and dozing and turning heavily in his chair. He remembered the words, no good for anything. Then he crept over to Badger's desk and borrowed some paper and pens. The next morning, a poster appeared, pinned to a tree in the clearing. Everyone got excited. I'm bound to win the Fairy Cake Award, said Squirrel. Maybe I'll win the slow dancing, said Miss Snail. They spent the rest of the day wondering who was going to win what and working on what they were going to wear. Meanwhile, Bon went to see Badger. You'll have to come, of course. A little bird tells me you may be getting something. Badger's eyes moved sharply for the first time in days. Really? His voice had some edge to it, some color. Suppose my tuxedo needs a press. You wouldn't help me with that, would you, Mole? And he did. Then he ran home to press his own, not to mention prepare some speeches, write out certificates, order the juice and cakes, book the musicians, and set up the clearing. But somehow, by the time everyone arrived for the ceremony, he was ready. He showed Stoat's doctor friend to the platform. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Badger slipping in at the back. He sighed. The first award did go to Squirrel for fairy cakes, and Miss Snail did win for slow dancing. Frog won for best hopping and most gallant courting. Stoat won for swimming, Weasel for wiliness, Field Mouse for scurrying, Hedgehog for eating the most potato chips at one sitting, Rat for reading, Rabbit for first aid, and Bat for most musical accordion playing. And now, announced Mole, we come to the last section. He cleared his throat. The award for always knowing the best way through the woods goes to... There was an expectant hush. Badger! The clapping and cheering was deafening. When it had died down, Mole cleared his throat again. And to save yourself a trip back to your seat, the award for always knowing what to do in a crisis, Badger! Mole waited for the applause to fade. And the award for always being there for others, Badger! The award for most needed and depended on, Badger! And finally, the award for most loved, whatever his mood, Badger. The crowd rose, clapping and calling, bravo! Badger blushed and bowed and bowed and blushed and fumbled with all his certificates. Oh my, he whispered to Mole. Well, this is too much. No more than you deserve, said Mole. Whoever thought up this ceremony, said Badger to Mole, deserves a medal. 2 medals. Because, you know, how and again, everyone needs to hear how much they're loved, interjected Mole. And appreciated, bowed Badger. Then Mole announced, okay, everyone, Badger's back. Let's dance. And they danced and celebrated and hugged each other and remembered to tell each other how much they appreciated each other, because who knows who will need their love and appreciation next.
Every week, our congregation takes a good portion of our Sunday morning offering and gives it away to a social justice cause outside our church walls. This month, we are supporting the good works of Housing Opportunities Made Equal. Home's mission is to promote the value of diversity and to assure the people of Western New York an equal opportunity to live in housing or communities of their choice. Home provides comprehensive services for victims of housing discrimination by investigating incidents of discrimination, providing counseling and advocacy. Home also provides education and outreach through training, workshops, presentations, and materials to home seekers and housing providers. Lastly, Home administers a mobility program that assists individuals seeking to move to areas of higher opportunity. You can use PayPal by going to our website, www.buffalouu.org, and clicking on the blue Donate button. Or you can send a check by mail to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Buffalo, 695 Elmwood Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14222. You can also make arrangements with your bank to have them mail your donation as a payment. If yours is a gift to the Share the Plate ministry, please write share on the memo line and it will be shared between Home and the church operating budget. If yours is a welcome gift to our congregation, please write Pledge 2021 on the memo line. Either way, please write UUCB on the important line and we will do the bookkeeping. Let's give from our hearts so we can transform the world.
A selection from Reverend Meyers' book, Held, originally from Mark Morrison Reed. Nate was maybe in his 30s. He would sit in the front row, rubbing his legs and rocking back and forth during the worship service. He was a bit awkward, his voice loud, and from time to time he would disappear. One weekday, Donna, Mark's wife and co-minister, and I were at a bridge party with the senior members of the congregation. They were mostly in their 80s, and we gathered in a nice suburban apartment. There were plenty of appetizers, serious card playing, and some light conversation until the host had said, "I don't know how you put up with that young man fidgeting. Terrible." What happened next left me stunned. One octogenarian said, "You do know it's his medication that makes him do that." A retired public health nurse told us she had spoken to him and knew what had been going on with him. A former university president said, "I was once institutionalized." And someone else said, "My son has bouts like that." Neither Donna nor I said a word. My amazement turned to pride, and I knew why Nate kept coming to church. It was not about sermons, whether scholarly or entertaining. It was not about universalism or our professed belief in a loving God. It was our lived theology, God made manifest in the love that surrounded that young man.
Please join me in an attitude of prayer. May we discover through pain and torment the strength to live with grace and humor. May we discover through doubt and anguish the strength to live with dignity and holiness. May we discover through suffering and fear the strength to move toward healing. May it come to pass that we be restored to health and to vigor. May life grant us wellness of body, spirit, and mind. And if this cannot be so, may we find in this transformation and passage moments of meaning, opportunities for love, and the deep and gracious calm that comes when we allow ourselves to move on. Amen. The words of the Rabbi Rami M. Shapiro. And now let us fill this sanctuary with the names of all our loved ones suffering in sorrow and celebrating in joy. Each name a breath, each breath a prayer. Please place the names of loved ones into the chat during the musical reflection.
wenn ich in deine Augen seh, so schwindet all mein Leid und Weh. Doch wenn ich küsse deinen Mund, so werd ich ganz und gar gesund. Wenn ich mich lehn an deine Brust, kommt's über mich wie Lust. Doch wenn du sprichst, ich liebe dich, so muss ich weinen bitterlich.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here. I'll start with a story. Who I knew, so Unitarian Universalist, and her daughter was having some serious psychiatric problems and was hospitalized in a psychiatric ward of a hospital. She and her husband both worked, and after work they would quickly have dinner and go and visit their daughter to give her support. And one evening they got a phone call right before they were going to leave, and it was from someone at the church, and the church said, you know, so-and-so at our congregation has just been hospitalized and we're trying to arrange meals for the family. Could you possibly create a meal for this other family? So they hurriedly put together something and took it over to the woman's house, and they went off to visit their daughter. And when they were on their way there, the woman said to herself, wait a minute, we have someone in the hospital too. Nobody's bringing us casseroles. Is there a double standard here? And the answer is yes, there's a double standard. People who are hospitalized for psychiatric problems, and probably those who are in rehab for addiction, often people are just quiet about it and they don't offer to bring casseroles. And sometimes families don't even tell people that they have somebody ill with one of these. So my message today is the no casserole disease has to stop. To be helped just like any other situation. Let's start just with some definitions or some prevalence. 1 in 5 American adults each year is diagnosed with a mental health problem, and this has been worse since the pandemic. I've heard now that it's 1 in 4. So every Sunday, you should know that the pews or the Zoom screens are filled with people living with mental health problems and with their loved ones. So what is a mental health problem? These are definitions from the American Psychiatric Association. Mental health is defined as the successful performance of mental function resulting in productive activities, fulfilling relationships with other people, and the ability to adapt to change and to cope with adversity. Mental disorder, on the other hand, is defined as a behavioral syndrome creating impairment or distress in thinking, mood, or behavior that has been diagnosed by a mental health professional. Another important concept is that these two things, mental health and mental disorder, are on a continuum. So it isn't like everyone's all healthy or everyone's all disordered. People move back and forth on that continuum as they live their lives. So what does it mean to recover from mental health problem? Mental health recovery, this is a definition from the SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Agency. Mental health is a recovery, is a process of change in which people improve their mental health and wellness. They live a self-directed life and they strive to live to their full potential. It doesn't necessarily mean the absence of symptoms or the absence of the need for medications. Many times these things have to continue. I'll give just a little bit of my own story. There's a picture of me from 1978 with my 10-day-old daughter. I shortly after that picture was taken, actually, I was hospitalized for a severe postpartum depression. I was suicidal, and my doctor and family felt that I needed to be hospitalized, and it was in the psychiatric ward of our local hospital. It was a shattering experience. I didn't like to think I was anything like those other people that were in the hospital, and I felt like I was a damaged human being. This feeling lasted for a long time. After my daughter was about 8 years old, I told myself I did not want to live my life like this anymore. And I went back to my psychiatrist and said, I really want to explore what's going on here. Why is I'm so desperately unhappy? One of the things that he asked me, and I didn't realize how unusual this was for a psychiatrist to ask me, was, what are you doing for yourself spiritually? And I said, nothing. Because at that time, even though I'd grown up in a Christian household, I had not been to church in 15 to 20 years. And he said, would you like to learn how to meditate? And encouraged me to meditate. And so as a result of that experience with meditation, I had a spontaneous spiritual experience. And in many ways, I was hospitalized again, actually, with depression shortly after that, but my experience in the hospital was completely different. All these other patients were all God's children, like me. And that was really a big realization for me. And I don't use the word rebirth I think rebirth is how I would describe my new way of finding my a purpose in my life and happiness that came from being able to have a spiritual life. And I eventually changed my career. Previously, I was a software engineer. I worked for IBM Corporation for 25 years. I took an early retirement and went to seminary, and my intention was to be a minister focused on helping people with mental health problems. So how do people heal from mental health problems? It's really, what I'd like to get across here is that healing involves the whole person, involves you emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, physically, environmentally, financially, occupationally, and socially. And many of these things are things that people in congregation can help, covering things that are not covered by professional mental health. That people can certainly engage in spiritual activities. They can engage in classes intellectually. They can be encouraged to take care of themselves physically. They can be encouraged to go out in the environment and find ways of learning their financial status. They can occupationally find something that it gives their life meaning, and socially, which is so incredibly important, to find a way to engage with other people in relationship. So healing takes the whole person. So mental health crisis is a spiritual problem as well as a psychiatric one. And spiritual practice is the number one coping skill that people use, even though professional psychiatry it never really emphasized this. In fact, they thought it was a delusion. But in fact, if you and there have been studies that show that if you ask people what is your number one coping skill, they'll say prayer or meditation or music or spiritual direction or some kind of tai chi, qigong, or yoga or chanting or other kind of spiritual practice. In fact, this is really the number one thing that helps people. So there was a psychiatrist in Dr. Mark Reagans who was in Long Beach, California, and developed this sort of stepwise way of how people recover various problems. And he said hope is the first step in recovery. And I'll give you a story about this. The first time that I was hospitalized in psychiatric ward, I thought my life was just over. My family said they were confident that I could recover, and I thought I'm just a burden to them. I shouldn't be around. My doctor said I've helped other people, and I thought, we doesn't know how bad I really feel. And then one day, I think the second day I was there or something, this woman, other patient, sat down with me, and she had been there for 3 weeks, and she was ready to be released. And she told me how she had felt when she first came in and how she was feeling now, and that I could feel better too. And after she told me that, I thought, maybe there's hope for me. That was really the start of my recovery, that putting that little thought in my mind and showing by her example that it was important. This is one reason why I think peer groups are so incredibly important, because sometimes just by their presence, they can give people hope. And sometimes we have to hold hope for people if they don't see it themselves. So presence. Presence is a sacred gift. Being present with somebody, listening to them without judgment, validating their feelings, not trying to give them advice, just being a presence with them is a sacred gift. I'll give you a story about another story. When I started my internship as a minister, I was in a fairly large church, and maybe the second week I was there or something like that, I knew one of the women in the congregation was living with some severe anxiety. And she came up to me one Sunday morning when people were rushing around at the beginning of a service trying to get ready. And she said, I'm just so anxious. I don't know what to do. I'm so anxious. Do something for me, Barbara. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. So I suggested, why don't we go over and sit together in the library? Because I knew that there was no one in the library at that time. Went in the library, closed the door, and I sat there holding her hand and thinking to myself, what can I do for this person? What can I possibly do? I'm going to be a failure as a minister if I can't think of anything to do. And after a couple of minutes, she said to me, I feel so much better just being here with you. What a gift to me to tell me that. And really a lesson that I needed to learn. Just my being there and caring for her, not even saying a word, was a gift. And everyone has the ability to get that kind of gift. I'll give you another story. Well, many times when I'm asked to speak at a congregation, I will tell a little bit of my own story because I know that, not because it's so incredibly special, but because I know that it makes it safe for other people to acknowledge what they're going through. And then at the end of the service, I ask people to rise in body or spirit if they or a loved one are living with a mental health problem. And every time I've done this, it's somewhere between 80 and 100% of the people will stand up. And everyone looks around and can't believe it. Oh my gosh, you're living with it too? Or your loved one is living with it? Oh my gosh, I had no idea that there were this many people affected. And then in coffee hour, it's become safe to talk about it. My sister had bipolar, or I had depression when I was younger, or whatever. I mean, people can talk about it. So I'll just give you this hint. This is the most effective stigma buster for mental health that I have discovered. So what helps a person? I've collected a number of things, and in the book that I wrote, I give more details about this, but these are sort of the categories of things that helps a person to recover. Getting some sort of professional or peer help, or even professional plus peer help to help them. That might involve medication, maybe it does or maybe it doesn't, whatever it is helpful to individuals, either psychiatrist or therapist. Another category is caring for your body, getting adequate food, getting adequate sleep, getting exercise, that kind of thing. A lot of that can really go a long way to help. Learning how to manage your stress. If you feel stressful, what is it that helps you to come down? Being aware of your emotions, knowing what your triggers are, how you feel when you're being triggered, and knowing what kind of things help you to get out of that situation. Enriching your life in some way, usually some kind of creative activity like crafts or art or dancing or some kind of intellectual activity like reading, learning some new thing, taking a class. And then finally engaging with your spirituality. Learn what kind of spiritual practice is something that feeds you. And what about families? Families are suffering as well as the person who's living. They're suffering in a different way, but they're suffering. They want so much to help their loved one. What helps the family? Professional or peer help again. There's an organization called the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. They have a wonderful peer support program called Family to Family that teaches families how they can work with their loved ones. Learning how to communicate effectively with the person. Helping your loved one to live with whatever their situation is. And finally, your whole life doesn't have to be about this. You need to have a life of your own. I mentioned that with COVID, things have gotten worse. What kind of things help people in COVID? And one thing is just to recognize that fear and uncertainty are normal to feel. So things that help you to deal with this is creating new routines like regular sleep times, regular wake time, limiting the news and social media that you are exposed to, and dealing with, when you do look at the news, reputable news sites. And if social media is triggering you, and that's true for many people, just limit how much you're going to watch or what it is you're going to, how you're going to engage with that. Developing helpful attitudes like finding something to laugh about or something that's humorous each day, and being non-judgmental and non-reactive to other people. Everybody is sort of on edge, and recognizing this is important, and not judging them. And also finding a way to reinvent your self-care. Staying hydrated, eating well, getting outside, exercising, and even, thinking of this as maybe a time when you can do something that you ordinarily wouldn't have done. There's a social justice component to mental health, and there's a lot of it has to do with uh, dealing with factors that make it difficult to get mental health care. There's a lack in many areas of wide availability to mental health treatment, and even when you get it, maybe your insurance company doesn't cover it, and even the expense of getting it is sometimes cost prohibitive. Many psychiatrists and therapists do not take insurance. They just expect you to pay upfront. And then there are cultural, linguistic, and geographic issues. That people who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color sometimes have a hard time finding a therapist that understands their life experience. If you don't speak English, it's sometimes very hard to find somebody that a therapist that will work. And then sometimes they're just in a geographic area that doesn't cover it. And then also there's the very large issue of involvement in the criminal justice system. There's a very large number of people in our jails and prisons who are mentally ill, and in fact, many large prisons and jails are the primary dispensers of psychiatric capabilities. So, and many times people get involved in criminal justice by when their family calls them, they're having some form of mental health crisis, and the family calls the police, and if the worst case is when people are killed by the police, and that has happened to people that I know, and then a lot of times people get involved, get put in jail, and have a hard time engaging with people, and then are labeled as somebody that needs to have special treatment. So it's really hard. So there's a lot of ways, if you're interested in social justice, working on these kind of issues in your community. All is not lost, however. There are many low-cost options for people. There's many fine peer and self-help groups are free. The peer organization that I work in is free to people who come because we get our funding from our county. There are some local governments that have social services that are free or on a sliding scale. And many of the things that I listed back in the previous chart, things that help the individual don't have a cost, like being present with people or something like that, something that can be added. And then I've written a book, and this is a copy of it. It was published by Skinner House Books, which is a UU publishing house. And I talk about how every member of a congregation can show up and help people. And there's a study guide included in the book. If somebody would like to have a book read and go through the study guide in a congregation. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And like I said in my talk, what I'd like to do at the end of a service is ask for public witness of those who are living, or they or a loved one are living with a mental health. And we're going to try this on Zoom Usually I have it in a congregation where people can stand up, but try it on Zoom. So you can answer the poll. Okay. I'm going to share the results. 89%. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Amen.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me, sing to me quietly? Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Extinguishing the chalice. As we extinguish the flame of this chalice, may we carry its light with us into the world in the power of peace, faith, justice, and love.
Friends, thank you for your willingness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your witness. Thank you for your service and commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth, and may we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey on this path alone. The words of Ruddy Biggs. Go in peace. Amen.